Hello, I'm Meg Salyer, and I'd like to welcome everyone to the Ward 6 Council Show. With me today is Nancy Anthony, who's the Executive Director of the Oklahoma City Community Foundation and a fabulous partner with the city on so many things. Welcome, Nancy. We're delighted you're here. And we also have Russell Klass, who's the city's Planning Director. And today, on this gorgeous day, we're going to talk about parks. So, Russell, you might introduce a little bit the partnership that we have with the Community Foundation and talk a little bit about our parks master planning process.
Well, we're engaging in a fairly comprehensive approach to planning for parks for the future, and we're taking a little different track on this by including the Community Foundation. Obviously, the community are the primary users and the primary beneficiaries of our park system, so we felt that it was extremely important that they be engaged in this process from the beginning. So the intent is to look at how the whole park system should operate, how we would want it to operate in the future, and what kind of partnerships we can develop there with people outside of the city.
Nancy, what was your interest in participating with the city? I know you've got a significant financial commitment to this. I think this is a $150,000 total planning effort, and the Community Foundation generously stepped up for half of that. So,
right. Well, actually, we've been funding projects in parks, primarily beautification parks, but some programming with respect to children in the after-school hours since about 1989. And so, as you know, the city does lots of things. I mean, they have streets and they have water lines and they have traffic signals and they have parks. And it's interesting that the citizens are really interested in parks and they really want to help participate in parks. Now, I don't know that they want to help you lay a water line or fix your traffic signal, but they do really
every now and then they do want to help with traffic signals,
but they do,
by the way.
But they do want to help with parks, and it's amazing. But in order to get people to help with parks, you probably have to have a way for that to happen, for it to be appropriate for both the city and for what the citizens can do, but also try to do the kinds of things that people want to do. And parks have changed over the years. I can remember, you know, merry-go-rounds and sliding boards and swimming pools, and we have a few swimming pools, but we don't have the same kind of water things, and we have very different kinds of playground equipment now. And so people are using the parks, I think, more and not so much differently, but they have a really, really strong interest in those parks. So it's really an appropriate time, I think, for the city to look out there and say, what do we really want in our parks? Because I think that there are lots of neighborhood associations, businesses, and other groups of people that would like to not only express their opinion, but also help with those kinds of things. So it's a great time to have a master plan. And I think from the standpoint of the parks, as we've talked with them, if everybody kind of knows what the plan is, then it's really easy for people to plug in. So that's sort of the whole effort is to make sure that we are meeting the needs of the people, but we also give the people an opportunity to help.
Great. And so I think one of the things important about this effort is, you know, we've been shining the spotlight so much on the MAPS 3 big downtown park. We have our beautiful new Myriad Gardens, but we're talking here about neighborhood parks that span across the entire city.
Right. The parks are a system, and I think that that's really important. But people, even people who don't necessarily live in Oklahoma City, don't think about the park as not being a park that they can use. So I think we need to think about all the parks as working together and make sure that even some of the public spaces, one of the things we have talked a little bit about is school land and school grounds, and maybe in fact we can begin to incorporate the maintenance and how those areas function is part of the park system too, so that we have parks and public spaces that are open that people can use in lots of places. I know the schools have been very involved with us in talking about the park system, and so I think there could be some great overlap in both of those areas.
Great, fantastic. We sent out, Russell, an RFP to ask for some help with this process, and I was delighted. I think you were. You might share how many responses we got back. And
I can't recall. I think we get a dozen.
Yeah, at least a dozen, maybe 16.
16. There was a lot of interest in this, and interestingly enough, I mean, we had also a proposal at the same time for the design of the downtown park. So we had two different initiatives, major initiatives, going on for the city at one point in time. So that together, I think, helped to draw a very significant level of national attention to us. And we, I guess, one of the few cities that have so much activity going on. And we in the planning department have about 12 different studies going on now. And this one in particular is part of that larger effort, because we're redoing our comprehensive plan at this point, and parks or open space and recreational opportunities are such an integral part of what the plan is intended to accomplish. And so we have objectives that go beyond what the Parks Department, who are a partner in this, would like to see, because there's going to be the publicly owned parks, but we're looking at privately owned parks and recreation opportunities as well. And then, as Nancy had mentioned, there's been this long-standing relationship with parks, and we would like to foster and encourage that as much as we can going forward, because for one thing it provides, I think, more opportunity for creative review of how parks can function.
Great. You know, I think one of the things that Nancy and I were talking about on the way down was, you know, we've had a plan for many, many years about our parks, but it's been about how we plan for bond issues and what kinds of things physically go in them, not as much the creativity piece of this, and how the system of parks, which I think is a really good way to look at it, work together.
Right.
And so I think that's really where you're trying to come from.
Right. I think it's, and as much, some people have special interest. I mean, they have areas of town that they want to support, but it's important to make sure that parts of town that maybe don't have the resources to come up with all those special interests still have parks, because they're such a positive part of what is part of this community, and they're such a wonderful asset for Oklahoma City. The weather that we have, there aren't too many times of the year when you can't be outside, and the space that we have, sometimes it's a challenge because we have so much space, but yet we should, I think, champion it, and I think parks are a great way to begin to do that and to take advantage of it. So if we can treat it as a system and get everybody engaged and make sure everybody has a chance to get to a park or a school ground or some space, I think that's a wonderful thing, and it addresses that one. People would say that the primary reason that the Central Park was started in New York City was for health reasons, to give people a chance to get outside of the musty, dark city into an area that's health. Well, health is certainly something we need to address in Oklahoma City, so having more opportunities out there is important.
Thank you for making that segue, because that is a huge piece of this. You know, I really do think we're beginning to see a paradigm shift in the community, and you know, whether it's as simple as having lost 1 million pounds, or you know, just focusing our attention on the fact that getting outdoors, being active, getting our kids away from these things and these things and television sets to, you know, enjoying being outside and being active is going to be extremely important. And so linking our neighborhoods with green space and opportunities, the trail system.
Right. That's going to be wonderful. I think so many people are looking forward to making all the trails work together. So.
I was downtown this weekend, and I really don't think I've ever seen so many people on bicycles, which is another piece of this. We'll have bike trails and bike things that will connect all of these things. But I mean, there were people, in spite of the roads, in spite of Project 180, they were biking all over.
And as people move into Oklahoma City, which is a relatively new phenomenon from other places, they come with expectation of parks and trails and opportunities. And so I think that's a great time for us to try to really think about the planning, because we do have people who maybe their expectations are a little bit different a few years ago than when we had a merry-go-round, a swing, and a slide. I think they're looking for a little bit more.
And I think they're much more interested now in playing a role in the way the parks are developed and maintained and managed to meet their needs. So I see this as a major opportunity to provide a stronger connection between the parks and the neighborhoods, and the parks and the schools in the neighborhoods. So all of these can start to operate more again as single units rather than these sort of separated uses. I think that's a really important
I think so too.
Outcome.
Yeah, and you know, Nancy raised Central Park, and you know, that's one of the most magnificent municipal spaces in the country. And but it's funded in an interesting way. It's funded not just by the city of New York City, but
it has
there's a very large conservancy that helps support it.
Right, and I think that we have an opportunity to do some of that, not to the extent that obviously Central Park is, but we do have people and groups that are very interested in contributing to the beautification, to the maintenance, to the additional things like gazebos or other things that everyone can enjoy. But to do that, we all have to kind of agree that that's what an appropriate thing to do is. In fairness to the park people, lots of times people went out and put something in a park that just really can't be maintained or is not appropriate. So we need to make sure we have all that kind of laid out in a way that's helpful to them, and as well as does what people want to.
Well, one of the things you alluded to early was the beautification work that's been done
Right.
through the Oklahoma City Community Foundation, and I always like to mention the Margaret Annis Boys Trust
Right.
that was established for beautification purposes and has lived on for years and years and years, providing trees and plants and landscaping plans. And
the
fabulous.
greatest thing about that is we've worked with more than 200 neighborhoods. All we provide is some seed capital to actually purchase greenery. The maintenance and the long-term concern of looking after those plantings, and almost all of them are on public lands. They're not all in parks, but a lot of them are medians or frontage roads. It's all done by the neighborhood. So that's a testament, we think, that the fact that the public will be interested in helping with these improvements. But again, you have to engage them, and I think that's what the plan will do.
Well, it's incredibly exciting, and I love tying it back into the OKC plan and your process. You've got a whole group of people focused on expectations and what we look for in the future. I wanted to, before we wrap up here, I just wanted to mention a really exciting announcement that occurred last Friday, and that was the announcement of City Arts Center, with whom you're also connected, moving downtown to 12th and Broadway in a historic space for the Community Foundation and the Kirkpatrick family, and maybe you could share that with us.
There's a little 3-acre park between about 10th and 12th along Broadway that's been there. It's called Campbell Park, and then that's where the USS Oklahoma City anchor is. Well, right behind that is a little building that used to be the Kirkpatrick Oil Company, and for years Mr. Kirkpatrick, when the oil company was there, took care of the park. Well, later on the oil company left and we lived there, and then we moved, and so old nursing home was recently torn down, and Chris Cassee, who's sort of the founder of City Arts, I think always kind of felt like that was home, and so they have been able to purchase the property that was just to the east of that park, so they'll be going in there. It'll be a little while, maybe a couple of years before they're able to actually get the building constructed. They're still at the fairgrounds, and their program is wonderful, so don't think that they're not somewhere now, but we're looking forward to it. I think it'll be a wonderful addition to downtown, and it really will enhance that little park quite a bit.
Oh, I think it's just a wonderful, wonderful opportunity, fantastic public-private partnership that begin to come together, and we see it happening all over the city. But Nancy, we're so grateful, the Community Foundation, for so many years.
Well, thank you to all our donors who really have been supportive of all that.
Great. Well, it's made a huge difference in the life of this community, and we really appreciate it. And Russell, you said you've got 13 studies going on there, an incredible amount of balls up in the air in the planning department, coupled with all the efforts that our Public Works department is actually executing a lot of these things. So we know that we have a tremendous amount on our plate right this minute, and I just want to say thank you to you and your staff for all the great work that you do, and
You're welcome.
we'll be back to talk about those other 12 in just a little bit. So thank you very much for coming.
Thanks for your support.